Alright guys, welcome back to another tutorial. This week we have something once again special, but I think what's been cool with what's happening at school is that you guys have been liking the tutorials, but we haven't been doing too much longer hair. So today I want to do a demo that's focusing a little bit more on length. Obviously Huey came in with overgrown hair and it's our job to reshape this, but I had a quick consultation with Huey. The consultation that we had was that he's in the process of growing his hair out, but he's faced with an issue, which is that there's just too much weight and that his hair is way too heavy. Obviously, I have one job today, which is to make him feel like this is gonna be a growable haircut. So he's currently in the awkward phase where he wants to grow his hair longer and he feels too heavy. And my job is to take out that weight. This kind of breaks it down to, the steps I'm gonna end up choosing before we get into that. I'm gonna start with the breakdown of this haircut. So this week's gonna be a very cool video, longer, layered brush back. Hope you guys enjoy, and let's get into the tutorial. Alright guys, so immediately off the bat, I always start with the front profile because the front is what Huey's gonna be looking at, right? His head feels very wide from the front because there's just way too much weight in the parietal ridge in these two corners here, right? When you're trying to grow out length, the length technically comes from the external length. So all this internal weight that's sitting in the parietal ridge or in the crown is technically unnecessary. But I think something that's very important is reading head shape before layering, because always making sure you're layering correctly to the client's natural head shape is only gonna allow the layers to grow out better. So we start in the front and we take a look at what we're directly identifying. First thing I notice is his head shape, right? His corners tend to peak quite a bit and he has a little bit of a wider shape towards his parietal ridge. So what would this mean? When I'm layering this, I might have to take a little bit of a softer shape so I can combat that strength in the corners. If I add more strength to the corners by going with a triangular or square shape, this might just look even wider. In order to slim this down, I might have to go with a little bit of a softer shape, maybe round, maybe square. That will identify as we jump into the layers. Second thing I notice is the shape of the head from the back. The shape of the head from the back. So when you're feeling out the shape in the head in the back, I start from the top, which is the apex, and I slowly just move into the nape. Luckily here, we're left with a very good head shape. Huey has a quite round head shape, which, like I said in my previous videos, this is an ideal head shape for most shapes. Square, triangular, round, that's kind of gonna be up to me. But in this case, the goal is to what? Remove weight. So removing weight is probably the biggest thing that I need to focus on in this haircut. After I break down head shape, second thing I want to break down is natural hair texture. First thing I notice is that the front is a slightly frizzy. So this is two things. First thing is choice of length. I take it down to a choice of length. That's gonna make it a little bit less frizzier. Second thing is choice of product. Styling his hair at the end. Maybe I'm not gonna use texture powder or matte pomade. Maybe a little bit of hair oil in the front or something a little bit softer that's gonna give it a creamier essence. That's something I noticed in the fringe with the texture. Overall, he has fluffier, wavier hair texture. So yeah, very easy hair texture to work with. I'm excited to get into this haircut. So with that being said, let's jump into this haircut. Next part is gonna be sectioning. And I want you guys to really look carefully at what I'm doing because this is either gonna be the part that makes or breaks the haircut for the entire look. So sectioning is gonna be, I would say, one of the most crucial steps for this haircut. But yeah, without much to say, let's get right into it. When I'm saturating the hair, I wanna fully saturate it. What I notice a lot of the time is that you guys tend to saturate the hair to section the hair, and you guys always ask, how do you get the section so clean? It's because it's fully saturated, right? So I start with the pre-soak, right? I'm just going in with my fingers and I'm just making sure the hair is fully soaked in water, right? I'm not even going in with the comb yet. Once I get a rough amount of water on there, I'm gonna go ahead and grab my round brush. And with my round brush, I'm gonna go ahead and just start really getting into internal zones and making sure that the haircut is nicely soaked for me to go ahead. Key tip here, guys. I want to show you guys a product that I really love. It's called Kavana Leave-In Conditioner. What this is going to do is it's going to keep the hair hydrated throughout the haircut. So sometimes you guys notice when you're working with long hair, damn, the hair's already dry and now it's hard to section. Or damn, because the hair is so long, it's kind of hard to section through. This is gonna smooth out the hair and give you a smoother process when trying to section. So go ahead and add a few sprays of this. Not too much, right? This is conditioner at the end of the day, so the last thing I want to do is over condition the hair and just make it all oily. A little bit is gonna, not only, it smells great, but it's gonna give the hair a little bit more of a hydrating look throughout the sectioning process. Roughly got everything down. I'm gonna go ahead and start with sectioning now. All right, so the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look for his natural parts. I'm just gonna push his head down a little bit. I'm just gonna comb back, okay? And with my fingers, right? I'm just looking for where it wants to split kind of naturally. When working with long hair, you never wanna force anything because his idea is to have natural flow going backwards, right? So the last thing I wanna do is force a section. So I'm just looking for the natural part slightly with my fingers. Now, to me, this part's very naturally, and this looks very natural in the parting. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and isolate this frontal area of the haircut. All I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spin the chair backwards, and I'm looking for another natural part of where the hairs wanna go forward and where the hairs wanna go backwards, right at this cowlick here. So we call this the radial section right behind the ear, right? As I've mentioned in my previous videos. Now I'm looking for where this naturally wants to part. For Hughie's hair, it actually is kind of higher than usual. So that's completely fine. We're gonna go with the higher part. Okay, drop it down. Okay, everything else comes forward. And now I'm gonna go ahead and look for the roundness of the head from the back. Okay, identify his corner in the front. Again, we're just gonna go with the straight line through. So we're gonna go ahead and drop it down. Let it where it naturally wants to part. Identify the corner, beginning of that round. Boom, section comes down. And we're just gonna identify, section out, just the top here. With the sides here, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go ahead and push everything forward. Push everything forward here. And I'm just gonna isolate the sides as well because where I wanna focus on is like the most problematic area of this haircut, which is the back. I'm just gonna start with the back for this haircut. With that, we've isolated just the back, and this is gonna be the first area that we're gonna be working with. So the goal right now, guys, that I want to get rid of length in the back here, right? The goal that I need to set is remove weight in the back, especially in this crown area. Second goal I have is retain the length in the nape. I like the length, okay? I like everything about the bottom here, but I don't like anything about the top right here. So obviously the choice of length needs to be round. I need to follow the head shape and I can't build up too much weight as I travel up. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set my choice of length starting at the top. How am I gonna do that? I'm gonna start with my vertical section, which is gonna be the very first process of the layering. I'm gonna go ahead and take vertical section, come straight through. We're just gonna work in clean sections. And all we're gonna do here, we're just gonna section this. So we're left with the guide straight through the middle. Everything underneath this nape, I'm gonna slightly disconnect like this, okay? Everything under where the nape is at, underneath the occipital bone, I'm gonna disconnect before I start my layer, just like that. So this middle section is created and I've slightly disconnected all the length down here. Now I turn the chair and I can look at this layer. I have a pretty clear view of what's going on now. Okay, I'm gonna move in smaller sections now. I'm gonna remove half of this. Okay, remove half of this out of the way. Okay, and where that disconnection begins is gonna be where the choice of length is gonna start for my round layer. So, because all of this is gonna be left, I'm gonna start my round layer right here of that disconnection. Next section comes through, and I'm staying round. I'm cutting to the shape of the head. Staying round. Just removing all of that weight. Section 2 comes in. And now, because the focus is on removing weight, I'm gonna go ahead and cut directly on base. So 0 over direction. Section 1 is coming directly into section 2, and I'm cutting the layers where section 2 is gonna be at. I pull 0 over direction, okay? I pull using pure tension. I pull, check my guide, and from here, I go ahead and I create my incision. And because I have a guideline now, it doesn't really matter whether I start from the top, whether I start from the bottom. All I need to make sure I'm doing is following that previous guide. And we're gonna move on, and we're gonna keep following these steps until I reach all the way to the end of this left side. We don't need all of that, right? From here, pick that up, check my guide. Next guide through, coming all the way down. This is like my third guide, so I want you guys to understand that I'm still using 0 over direction. Everything is going to be cut on base. So the previous section is going to come into this new one, and we're going to cut it directly on base right here. Okay, you guys see that guide? Check it. Two more guides left. We're going to split this right down the middle. And as you guys notice, I'm slowly pivoting sections as I move to the end. By pivoting, we're going to be able to keep that consistency with the size of these sections. Boom. Check your guide. There's the guide. Last guide through. And we're just going to stay on base and cut whatever's left. We're going to repeat that step exactly the same on this right side here. Section is going to come down. Boom. Isolate that out of the way. Okay, second section comes down. Pick that layer up. I'm staying on base, guys. Now this time I push to check the guide. And boom, once I see that guide, okay, go ahead and make that incision. See the guide? Goal is to remove weight. So then again, I travel in a round shape, not only vertically, but horizontally as well. Vertical round shape is gonna emphasize movement and create softness, which at the end of the day is gonna remove weight from me. Okay, so boom, guide's right there. Guide's right there. And as you guys notice here, watch what happens. As I move to this right side, pivot begins, right? I pivot just like a pie. Okay, treat this back area like a big piece of pizza. I'm just slicing each layer into slices, treating the middle of the crown as technically the middle of the pie. Boom. Check my guide. Once I see that guide, and then we have 2 sections left. Same thing with this right side. Okay, we are almost finished with the back. We're staying on base, guys. Nothing changes, right? Okay, nothing changes. Staying on base. Body positioning is key now because this is an awkward position of the head. I'm gonna kind of push forward and lean with my layer. Okay, watch that again. I grab my layer here and I lean forward. Okay. Okay, take a step back. As I grab it, I lean forward. One more time, I take a step back, grab that guide, lean forward, check. Okay, and that's gonna finish my process for cutting the back and removing all that weight. And if you guys notice, this is just gonna have a lot more softness and movement to the top. You guys see that? Okay, a lot more movement is going on. So we're gonna be moving on to the sides here, guys. What do we immediately notice? Too much weight. But I noticed one thing is that I wanna create a taper down here. the most ideal technique to go with in this case would be graduation, right? But if I pull this out, there's not much of a huge disconnection going on. You guys notice that? So I pull this out and the back and the sides actually don't have much disconnection. There is slight disconnection maybe right here, but that's very unnoticeable. I don't have to worry about choice of length, and I can go ahead and just graduate the right side here. All right guys, we're gonna be moving into the side transition here. One thing I know, I'm gonna be adding a taper. Second thing I know, I need to remove a little bit of weight. The two things is that I probably can't use too much over direction. And the second thing that I need to keep in mind is where I'm gonna set the guideline for the taper. So with that being said, let's get right into it. All right, so because I wanna remove a little bit of weight and I don't wanna build too much weight up in the side here, I'm gonna go ahead and move in diagonal sections. A diagonal that's actually closer to a vertical. The more vertical it is, it's gonna remove more weight. The more horizontal it is, it's gonna build more weight. So we're gonna use graduation closer to a vertical diagonal line. All right, so the first guy is gonna go through right here. Okay, we're gonna pull this down and I'm gonna go ahead and create my guideline. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and create our guideline. Boom, there's my choice of length for that taper. So I'm imagining where this taper is gonna sit and that guideline is gonna be created where that is. My knuckles are touching the head because it's quite tight to the shape of the head. But we're gonna go ahead and second guide is gonna come through and 2 is gonna go directly into guide number 1. Gonna clip that up, push everything down. So now 2 goes into 1. Not too much over direction is used. I'm using slight elevation to also remove a little bit of that weight. Boom, there's my guide. Okay, there's my guide. So now we have this weight line set for the taper. And we're just gonna trace everything back here. 3 is gonna go into 2. Okay, over directing just back to previous guys. Because I want to maintain all this length down here, as I transition to the back, here's what's going to change. So once I get into the section that actually touches the back, what I'm going to do is I'm going to elevate all of this out. Okay, and I'm going to try my best to not touch the length in the back. So as I move back, I'm just going to elevate higher and higher, keeping the lengths longer and longer as I reach the back. This is all layered, so final section here. Boom. Barely anything to touch. And there you guys have it. Graduation into layers. Okay, so same thing for this other side here. We're gonna go ahead and create a diagonal guide that's closer to a vertical line. Okay, peel this back. Boom. Knuckles are gonna be tight against the head because this area is gonna be tapered. We're gonna go ahead and create that guideline straight through. Same thing. So the line is actually gonna be square here, right? You guys always ask me, is it square? Is it diagonal? Like, what is this line? Guys, forget everything. Just think about where this taper is gonna sit and how much weight you actually need to keep in this area. So the line is gonna be square, slightly diagonally, depending on where that 3 guide is gonna sit. Second guide through. Boom, check your guide. Over directed back to previous. Now, this third guide, that's gonna dig into the nape. You guys see that? Remember what I did in the past. As I cut this, and as I reach the back here, one more time, I'm gonna show you guys. I'm gonna go ahead and elevate all this. By elevating higher, I'm gonna be able to retain all that length. And now we're slowly getting into the portion that's cut directly into the back. Boom, barely anything to cut yet. So now we're just gonna get less and less hair to cut because a lot of this has already previously layered. Sides are now graduated as well. It flows beautifully into the back. Last section here, we're gonna go ahead and remove these clips. And I'm gonna layer the top of it because I want to go ahead and remove a little bit of this length. We're going to take a vertical section straight through the middle. Okay, vertical section, straight through the middle. I know one thing for sure is that I'm gonna have some sort of disconnection in this area because I've already cut the back. Okay, unless it magically happens to have no disconnection, I'm looking for the disconnection. As I pull this up vertically and boom, there it is. There is my disconnection. So what am I gonna do with that disconnection? I'm gonna create a slight disconnection and I'm gonna leave that disconnection because I want the top to fall over the back. I am gonna layer this, so my choice of length is gonna start slightly after that disconnection. So this is the disconnection right here. You guys see that? Boom, short to long. Okay, we're gonna keep some of that right there, okay? That's where my choice of length is going to sit. Keeping that disconnection, but not all of it. Boom. And we're gonna move in a slightly round line for the front here as well. What is round gonna do for me in the front? It's gonna create volume. I'm gonna take my second guide through, straight through. Now I'm gonna be pushing into guide number 2. So we want a square shape from the front, right? I want the front to sit square. How am I gonna do that? 2 is gonna come into 1. So now we're using a little bit of over direction, one section at a time. From here, we're gonna go push, boom. Check your guide, there it is. The next guide is gonna be my third section, and my third section is gonna fall into my second section. So one section at a time. If you end up over directing too much, you're not even creating a square shape at that point. It's gonna be more of a triangular shape, right? For a square shape, you just wanna grab one section at a time. Over direct, one section at a time. Full stop. Okay, cut. This very last section right here, guys, what I always tell my students to do is just push everything over. So I'm pushing everything over, and whatever hasn't been touched, I'm just... Let's move on to the right side. I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing. Create our section, clip away, create a subsection. Now what we do is we pull, grab that section. My bad, not pull, we push. So we push, let's check the guide. Last 2 sections here for you guys. 2 sections left. Boom. Something here, boom. Grab that section, push. There's the guide. Cut it. It's so easy to follow the guide once you guys have my initial guide set in the middle. I think the tricky part of you guys always getting lost, oh, where's my previous guide at and why did I lose it? Is probably because you're taking 2 big sections. If the sections fall too big or too wide, there's a higher chance of you losing that guide. So I would just say work organized and work in smaller sections. Push everything over, pull everything over, and what hasn't been touched, it's your chance to just go ahead and remove that now. Boom, that's it. Top, back, sides, everything has been cut, and we can kind of move on to our dry shape. But before we do that, we're gonna look for that natural middle part one more time, where it naturally just wants to split. And I'm gonna look for my disconnection on the sides here. And all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna pull that out, okay? And there it is. You guys see that? This disconnection. I'm gonna over there because everything kind of lower. And all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna clean up a little bit of this disconnection. So you guys can see that's the disconnecting line. You guys see that? Pretty big of a disconnection. But I'm just gonna keep most of that disconnection, but I'm just gonna clean it up. Just so that the disconnection that we have from the top and the sides isn't as like drastic, okay? And I'm getting a little bit longer as I travel to the front. Nice and easy. Same thing with this side, getting rid of some of that disconnection. It's nice and easy, okay? Now what I'm reading is just like the softness of how his hair likes to lay, how much volume he actually has. One thing I noticed immediately kind of off the bat is the fact that his hair doesn't need to be softened too much because I can already feel the airiness from all the layers that we added. I don't think you guys need to think like every haircut needs to be softened. That's a big misconception. But obviously when this haircut's dry, there are gonna be areas that I need to touch up, soften, remove a little bit of weight in. But I think the idea of every haircut needs to be entirely softened needs to kind of go out the door starting today. So all I'm doing is I'm just seeing how his hair feels naturally, okay? That's the biggest thing. How is the client's gonna feel as this haircut grows out and how the haircut's gonna feel as he grows his hair out. Okay. So pre-style, I want something a little bit lighter, something a little bit more airy. So I'm gonna be using defining whip. I'm gonna be using some refining whip by Light Elements. Use a little bit of this. And I'm just running this through to the hair. And because the finish I want is very nice and airy, and it's not a finish where it's gonna have, you know, all this tight texture. A lot of the things I wanna start teaching in this course is how do you actually figure out how your client's gonna love his haircut rather than you really liking it, but the client being like, oh, this is kind of harder to style at home. So something that's realistic and wearable, but also a very stylistic approach because you want to express yourself during the styling portion. So instead of a brush back that's so tucked, tight, I'm gonna actually go with more of an airy finish by using my diffuser to style this look. So once I get the product in place, I have everything falling the way I like it. Diffuser is gonna go on. I'm gonna go ahead and diffuse this entire look. Power is gonna be on high, and the heat setting is gonna be on low. Okay, the blow dryer, as I'm blow drying this, I'm just hitting the roots slightly so it can expand in weight. And notice how his hair is like much more, has a lot more volume now. And if I were to soften this look too much, it would have just looked frizzy. So I think it's a great idea that I didn't choose to soften this look too much because of the way I think he's gonna end up wearing it and also the way I'm choosing to style it in this look today. Without much to do, my 3-guard is gonna go on there as well. I'm gonna keep the 3-guard closed this time. I'm gonna look for that weight line that we've created on the sides here. Looking for that weight line. Once you identify that weight line, you can go ahead and cut into that. No guard closed, setting my guideline. Okay, I'm going for a real low taper here, guys. Nothing too high. This skin line sits right underneath that. Now, on top of that, I'm gonna go ahead. 1 guard goes on, 1 guard open. We're just gonna flick out into half of this debulk line. Close it up. Okay, close that out, and we're gonna hit right underneath that. 1.5 open, and we're gonna hit right above that. Close it up and hit right underneath that. No guard, open, and we're just gonna flick out that last line. And that right there is pretty much gonna complete my taper. Now all I need to do is just detail this taper in. Half guard goes on, and I'm only using my corners to detail now. I'm gonna go ahead and outline behind the ear. Okay, nothing too drastic. We don't need to clean off too much of this little taper. And for my C cup here, we're gonna go with a very natural lineup as well. Okay, starting from the bottom, I'm gonna hook out. go ahead and repeat the exact same steps on the other side. Guideline goes in. Thin line goes in. Pull that up. Now 1.5 goes on. Open that up and hit right above that. Close it up. No guard open. And paper is pretty much complete. And now I just go ahead and detail with my half guard. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and trim down a little bit of this length. So all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna grab the bottom and I'm just gonna take out a little bit of length using my feather razor tool. Just a teeny tiny bit. Because I feel like it's just a little bit too long. The foundation of the haircut is really set in. So now it's making sure everything looks picture perfect and that, you know, I create this into a flawless look, right? This is kind of where your creative expression can come in more. So I'm gonna soften just a little bit of this portion here because I feel a little bit heavy for my liking. But a lot of this fringe area I'm gonna keep because the hairs in the front, like I said, are frizzier. So I don't wanna remove too much of this weight or else it'll just get, the hair in the front will just frizz up even more if I soften it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna separate the frontal area right here. Separate that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and go into the internal weight here. And I'm just going to soften some of this. Okay. Anywhere that curls out too much, go in the opposite direction so that you don't sacrifice too much of that length. Now in the back, I'm going to soften a little bit of this up too. But instead of going towards the ends, which is going to emphasize texture, there's already a lot of texture in the back. So I'm just going to go in a little bit deeper now, okay? And I'm just going to really remove only the weight, okay? I don't want to add more texture than the back already has. I'm just going to go ahead and remove just a little bit of weight, guys. My idea is not to soften this too much. Just in areas that feel a little bit heavy. Okay, just going based off feel at this point. Okay, same thing in the front. On this side, go ahead and isolate my fringe and all that way. Not too much, or else the hair is just gonna look really frizzy. Okay, boom. Now moving in horizontal sections, which will, you know, keep me organized and also make sure this is a chance for me to actually check my cross check for the top. As I get to the back, move in deeper sections and only remove weight. We don't want to emphasize any more texture than the back already has. So the back here, same thing, pull this out. Weight in the bottom, I don't mind at all. So we're not going to touch that. Just slightly removing the weight in the areas of the haircut that needs to be removed, but not removing too much because the haircut's going to get too frizzy and too dry if too much weight is removed everywhere. So I did some personalization only in the areas that I felt like needed it. Okay guys, we're in the final process right now. Just blading Huey up. Okay, adding my final touches to the haircut before we get into probably the most important part for any demo that I do, which is the post-styling part. So I'm going to be adding a little bit of matte texture paste by 11, just a bit to really bring out that shape. And when I'm applying this, I'm not running into the roots, I'm just scrunching towards the ends. Okay, I'm literally just scrunching. Okay, I have some texture powder here. In areas that I feel like are lacking a little bit of volume, I'm gonna throw a little bit of texture powder in. Just in the areas that I want to bring out the volume. Here's the fun part, guys. Like, once I get to this final portion of this haircut, I think my final steps are just really touching everything up and making sure everything falls in place. So I think the idea is making sure that everything is, you know, picture perfect for what I kind of want to capture. But I always finish my haircut off with styling hairspray, but that's going to be at the very end. So right now what I'm doing is I'm getting my styling comb and I'm kind of just placing things where I directly want it to be. So I'm basically touching up how everything needs to go. Just trying to make everything fall where I want it to be. And once everything looks like it's falling into place, there's definitely a portion where I stop touching it, and I think that's going to be right around now. Okay. Fix this front layer. Hairspray comes in.